What's up, Mopar enthusiasts? This is episode number 4 of Talking Mopars. On today's show, we talk about the Elephant Crate Engine, my dream Mopar, the 11th annual Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals, Project Car of the Week, listener stories, and to close out the show, I'm going to tell the story of my own project car, what it is, where I found it, when I found it, why I bought it, and how much I paid. Don't go anywhere. I am your host, Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and this is Talking Mopars.
You're listening to Talking Mopars with the Mopar Hunter, your direct connection to all things Mopar.
Unless you've been living under a rock the past year, then you've probably heard of the Elephant Crate Engine. This is a 426 cubic inch supercharged Hemi that you can order direct from Mopar Performance. Now, this engine produces 1,000 horsepower and 950 pound-feet of torque. It was released for pre-order on Hemi Day, that's April 26, 2019, 426, for $30,000. It includes supercharger, throttle body, water pump, flywheel, oil pan for the front sump, coil packs, and fuel injectors. And for about $2,300 more, you get an engine kit making the swap completely plug and play. It is probably the coolest crate engine offered by any American manufacturer or any manufacturer on planet Earth, period. That's my opinion, but I'm sticking to it. It sold out, according to sources and reports, it sold out in 48 hours. So when it went for pre-order, gone. You can't even get one now. So hopefully they increase production on that. Not that many of us can afford $30,000 crate engine, but it is very cool. And when it came out, I've been thinking about this for about a year. And when it first came out, I thought to myself, what would I put the Elephant Crate Engine in? And my first thought, without hesitation, was I would love to build a recreation of the Superstock Hemi Dart from back in 1968. But I'm curious what you would put the Elephant Crate Engine in. So get at me, Chris at TalkingMopars.com. What would you put a Elephant Crate Engine in? Are you putting a Elephant Crate Engine in something? Were you one of the lucky ones that pre-ordered it? Let me know. I'm curious. I want to hear those stories. Another thing that I was thinking about recently, and this has been haunting my dreams, literally, for years. And these dreams are very vivid. And in them, I always find a 1970 Plymouth Superbird, not in a barn, but in a field. And it's always an older gentleman that owns it, and somehow I convince him that I am the perfect person to take this car off his hands. Now, I know how unrealistic this story is. These dreams are far-fetched, but I think that's what really makes a dream car. Not necessarily one that you say, oh, I would love to have that. That's my dream car. This is literally my dream car. An as-found 1970 Plymouth Superbird. So I'm probably going to be on the hunt for this car for the rest of my life. And I hope I am positioned well enough when the time comes, if I ever find this car, that I can get it. And if dreams do come true, then there's going to be an old man, and he's going to sell me the Superbird. So I thought it would be funny to tell you about my dream car. So literally, my dream car, 1970 Plymouth Superbird, found in a field. What would I do? I would get it running and driving, and eventually, I'd drop $30,000 and get a Elephant Crate Engine and put it in the car. Unless, of course, it already had a Hemi. I just thought it would be fun to share that with you. Let's get into the McCacken Show. Now, what is the McCacken Show? The McCacken Show is the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. Wait, did I just say Corvette on the Mopar podcast? On the Talking Mopars podcast? Did I just say the word Corvette? Yes, I did. This show is one of the coolest shows you will ever see if you are a fan of classic muscle cars and Corvettes. What McCacken is once a year, the finest muscle cars and Corvettes descend upon Rosemont, Illinois, for the nation's largest indoor muscle car and Corvette show with well over 500 cars. There's so much to look at, you know, from Mopars to all the other brands. It is, I've never been, okay? But I have seen coverage from people on social media, and every time, jaw on the ground, surprised. They bring so much cool stuff. You have to be approved to go into this show. Not every Joe, Dick, and Harry can just go and bring their car. You have to have the right type of car. It's got to be the right condition and all that stuff. Speaking of conditions, they have special attractions. Like, for instance, this year, they had the original Bullet Mustang that's going to be auctioned at the Mecum auction. They feature really, really cool cars, and they have these themes, these theme sections, and it's just one of the coolest shows you could ever go to. They also have my favorite section, the Barn Finds and Hidden Gems display, and that's where they bring in from all around the country the craziest barn finds that are in existence right now that would blow your mind. I'll say that. So shout out to the auto archaeologist for making that happen. They also do the vintage certification program, and it's exclusive to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. Basically, what the vintage certification program is they believe in preservation over restoration, and they create multi-page reports based on multi-point inspections that they perform on these cars to grade them based on their originality. They're divided into 5 divisions. You have the vintage time capsule, which is cars that are 95% or higher unrestored in all the areas that they check. Vintage legend, that is 85% plus unrestored in all the areas they check. Vintage heritage, that's 85+% unrestored in 5 reference areas. Then they have vintage legacy. Those are vehicles that are 85+% unrestored in 4 reference areas. And then vintage reference, those are vehicles that are 85+% unrestored in at least 2 of the areas that they check. So that's really cool. That's something that if you can bring your car there and get it certified, that way you have that verification. So you know for a fact when you go talking about your car that, oh, it's this amount original. You know, the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals is a prestigious event in the world of classic muscle cars and Corvettes. And if you're going to go, I mean, make a trip out of it, because that is just an amazing show. I want to go to the 2020, the 12th annual Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. I'm doing everything I can to make that happen. I would love to record live from the show. That would be great. I was looking at some of the pictures, and it is like wall-to-wall people. Big percentage of these people are coming to look at these barn finds, because if you see the pictures from when the show was open at the barn find section, you can barely see the cars. There's so many people. It is insane. And it's also, you can make it a family vacation. They have all sorts of kids activities. It looks like a blast, and I can't wait till my daughter is old enough to take her to that show. That looks like fun. If you're a muscle car or a Corvette enthusiast or a classic car enthusiast, or if you just love cars, you don't want to miss out on that. You're going to learn so much from automotive history. Some of these cars are time capsules. And, you know, going back to the barn find section, these cars are literally pulled out from barns. I mean, they still have the barn dust on them. It is insane. So go check that out. Try to make it to the show. Like I said, I'm going to try. Hopefully you do too. So that's the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. If you want, go on social media or even just go on Google and just look or search for the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals and look at some of those pictures and tell me those aren't the most beautiful cars you've ever seen in your life. It is insane. Go check it out. It's awesome. It's time to get into one of my favorite segments of the show, and that's Project Car of the Week. This week's Project Car is expensive, but it is very cool. Let me just read the VIN number for you, and let's see if you can figure it out. JS23V0B204304. So what do we have? JS23. That's a Dodge Challenger RT. V, that's a 446 pack. 0, that's 1970. And B, that just says that its birthplace was the Hamtramck, Michigan assembly plant. That's pretty cool. It's EV2 orange. This car has a blackout hood treatment, bumblebee stripe, the chrome sport mirror. It still has the chrome fender trim. It's sitting on the rally wheels on old Goodyear GTs, or maybe they're Goodyear STs. This thing is sitting pretty much on some property. It looks like a horse ranch in Southern California. And this is just one of those cars. It's like the quintessential field find. You know what I mean? It's sitting there. Tires are flat. It's got blocks underneath it. I don't know. It may actually be sitting on the blocks. I can't really tell from the pictures. But very cool car. It's got the hood pins. It's got a nice patina, but not completely rotted. It does have a little bit of body damage. Nothing too crazy. It looks like the passenger front fender is dented in. This car, I'm looking at it right now, is if you're driving in this little southern town and you look off in the distance and you see this car and you see that EV2 Hemi orange in the distance, you're going to want to stop and go check it out. Now, it looks like, okay, so the car was last tagged in July of 1992, and it looks pretty solid. From what I see, it still has the carpet on the inside. It looks complete. It is a column shift car, which is pretty cool. At least I mean, I would rather have a 4-speed. I'd rather have a pistol grip in this thing, but the column shift makes it kind of unique, and I think that's pretty sweet. You know, I see potential in it, but it's listed for $35,000. So let's break this down. $35,000 for this car. You know, I'm kind of, I'm on the fence here because it's a cool enough car where I'm like, okay, you know, an RT, a 446-pack RT Challenger is worth saving, depending on how far gone it is. And I'm looking at this car, and although I don't have all the information, like I haven't gotten underneath the car, there's no underneath pictures, there's no pictures of the trunk pan, there's no pictures of the frame rails, I don't even see a picture of the engine. So let's just go based on what we know. So what I'm seeing is that this car, it would be worth it. It would be worth to buy this car because, like I said, it's still pretty complete. I would try to keep it as original as possible, to be honest. I'd try to hammer out that fender. I'd get the sucker running and I'd go enjoy it. $35,000, that's a little expensive, but hey, how many 1970 Dodge Challenger RT 446-pack cars are you going to see on the road that are mostly original? I think this is a solid investment for somebody. It's going to take the right buyer, but if I had $35,000, I'd probably buy it. So with the Project Car of the Week, you're going to see that a lot with these cars that I choose for this segment. Most of them I would definitely buy myself. So I'm going to try moving forward. I'm going to keep sharing cars that I think I would personally buy. So on this show, for Project Car of the Week, just know that I picked it because I would probably buy it myself if I had the money. This car is listed on Hemmings.com. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it seems to be pretty popular. You know, I posted it on the Mopar Hunter, and people had quite a bit to say about it. I think it's worth it. So if you got 35 grand, go pick this thing up. Save it. It's one of those cars that if you see this thing at a show in this condition, like I would actually take this to the McCacken show. I'd take this to the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals and see if I can get in the barn find section. I think that would be cool. So for $35,000, you could go down there. You could have it inspected and see if you can get that vintage certification. That would be really cool. And then, you know, who knows? You might be sitting there and you might find a guy who had the exact same car in high school and he wants to buy it from you and he's got deep pockets. So you never know. I think this car would be worth the $35,000. You know, if you could get it for any cheaper, hey, winning. You know, any more than $35,000 and you start getting into that questionable territory. But a car like this, I don't think you're ever going to lose any value in it if you put a little bit of money into it, a little bit of elbow grease, you know, straighten out some panels. But you know, if you want to just get it running and drive it, you know, throw some decent tires on it and get the brakes done and get it running, hey, that looks like fun. You know, I'm looking at this car and I'm just imagining watching it roll down the road. Heck, you don't even have to fix the front fender. Just drive it. Just enjoy it. You know, I think this is a really cool car, and I'm satisfied with this decision that for $35,000, I would take it home. What do you think? Let me know. Email me at chris@talkingmopars.com. Let me know if you would buy this car. I will post pictures of it on social media later. But I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've already seen it posted on the Mopar Hunter. But we're going to post it again anyway. All right, folks, let's bring this baby home. And let's close out the show this week with some listener stories. Now, usually I only share one story per episode, but I've been getting flooded with these stories, and I don't want you guys that have sent in stories to have to wait for too long before you get to hear them on the show. So, today I'm going to share 4 stories, plus my own. And these stories were picked somewhat randomly. I thought they had good messages, and I got so many at the same time that I was like, well, I'm just going to go through them as I print them out. So I've got these printed, and they're all really good. They're really nice. I love hearing stories like these, and some of the stories really touch your heart. And maybe I'm just a softie, I don't know, but I love hearing these stories. So if you're listening to this and you have not submitted your story yet, your Mopar story, feel free to reach out to me, Chris at talkingmopars.com, and submit your story. I would love to share it with everybody on the show. And that's that. So let's get into it. This first story was submitted by a gentleman named Gordon from Kidron, Ohio. Hi, Chris. I have been a Mopar fan all of my life. In 3 weeks, I will be 80 years old, the Lord willing. For 25 years, I owned Kidron cars in Kidron, Ohio. My wife Lorraine and I started the used car and truck lot in 1980. It is currently owned by our son Blaine. When I owned the lot, we sold mostly Mopars from the Omni and Horizon through the K cars, and rode the minivan the rest of the way. Blaine has had to get into the foreign makes because the people wanted them more, but he still prefers Mopars, especially the minivans. Over the years, I have kept a few for myself. A 1960 Dodge Dart Pioneer with 44,000 miles. It's like the one we had the day we got married. A 1950s Willys Jeepster. A 1966 Dodge Dart GT V8 car with 13,000 miles. A 1978 Dodge Little Red Express with 5,100 miles. Our summer driver is a 2006 PT Cruiser convertible. Daily drivers are a 2013 Chrysler Town & Country van and a 2002 Dodge Dakota pickup. I am a very busy volunteer and don't sit around the computer very much, so probably won't be catching your podcast, but it sounds like a lot of fun. At the height of my days at the lot, we were selling 40 to 60 Mopar minivans a year. Those were the good old days. Thanks for taking the time to read this. And good luck with your new adventure. Gordon. Thank you for your story, Gordon. I'm sad that you're not going to be listening to the podcast, but that's okay. We're going to share your story anyway, and maybe you'll catch it, maybe you won't. I think your story's pretty cool. It's funny because a lot of Mopar guys, they just don't care about the cars that actually saved Chrysler in the 80s, and that's the K cars. We're going to get into those on a future episode of the show, and I know a lot of people are like, K cars, yeah, crush them. I'm an equal opportunity Mopar enthusiast. I think that there's a little something cool in all areas of Mopardom. Yeah, Mopardom. That's what I call the kingdom of Mopars. That's Mopardom. Okay. The K cars saved Chrysler in the 1980s, thanks to Lee Iacocca. Rest in peace. But I think your story's cool because what a lot of people forget is that these cars helped a lot of people get through those 80s and make money. The 80s and the late 70s were a rough time for the automobile industry, in my opinion, as far as like looks and performance and all that stuff. So I'm glad that you were able to make it through and pass your business on down to your son Blaine. That is very cool. I'm sad that he sells more foreign cars than Mopars, but it's nice to know that he still has that passion for Mopars. I actually have always wanted to own a car dealership myself, and I know a lot of people that are in the business are like, don't do it. But I've always wanted, for some reason, I've always been interested in the car selling business. But who knows, I might have a car lot full of old ratty muscle cars or something someday, Lord willing. But hey, Gordon, happy birthday. If you make it to 80, that is awesome. Not a lot of people can say that, so that's something to say. It's great that for these years you've had this passion for Mopars. And, this story goes to show that you don't have to have a crazy Mopar car. You don't have to have a Viper. You don't have to have a Plymouth Superbird. Sometimes just a regular old Mopar will get you through, and that's all you need. And that's all that you need to fuel your enthusiasm for these cars. So that's very cool. And Gordon, you mentioned that you were a volunteer. That's very, very commendable. So thank you for that. And thanks for sharing your story with me. So let's get on to the next story. This next story is from a gentleman named Ian. Hi, my name is Ian Vantelberg, and here's my story on how I got my first vehicle. It all started out when my dad had a 1970 Dodge Dart Swinger 340, 4-speed, quad green, with a black tail stripe. Turns out one of 7 to leave the factory with an odd tail stripe. I might be wrong, but when we had it, it had a 364 barrel and a 727 torque flight, and the car was unreliable, hard on gas. So he traded it for a 1978 Dodge D150 long bed club cab custom. It was a nice truck, and around the same time, he bought me a little go-kart that was too small for me. So when we moved to the new house, he said, "You're coming of age, so let's see if we can trade it for a car or truck." And I said, "That's impossible." The go-kart didn't run, and the next thing I know, he said, "Get in the truck, load your go-kart on it, and let's go." And he found me a pretty much original truck as far as drivetrain and paint. It's a 1985 Dodge D150 Royal SE 360 4-barrel 727 automatic with a sure grip on an 8 1/4 differential. Only issue with the truck was the transmission was blown due to a backwards kickdown linkage on the carb. The truck factory with the E58 engine only made 185 horsepower. Torque, I don't know, but I'm now trying to trade it off for my dream car. A 1970 to 73 Dodge Dart, and I'm going to make it the way me and my dad were making his Dart, like putting a 344 speed in it and making it how it's supposed to be. I've always been interested in Mopars, and I wanted to share my story with you, and your podcasts are awesome, and I'd like to hear your story. I'm 15 and still in school, and when I heard of a Mopar podcast, I jumped aboard, and they're awesome. Thank you for making my day easier. Hey, thanks for sharing your story with me, Ian. It's always good to hear from younger enthusiasts because it ensures that the Mopar community is still going to live on long after the older generation is gone. So we have a younger generation coming up in the game, and it's really good to hear. So I'm really excited that you're a Mopar enthusiast and that you're going to be, in this for the long haul. And keep me posted on your project cars and your project truck and all that fun stuff. Thank you for sending in your story. This next story comes to us from Chasen Paulin. When I was 17, I went camping with my family near a small town called Barry's Bay, about 3 hours from our home. One day we went to the grocery in town and I saw a 2007 Charger SRT8 in a driveway across the road with a for sale sign on it. It was the car that made me want a Mopar. A few months later, I ended up scoring a decent paying job and saved up for a Charger SRT8. I wanted that to be my first car. Looked at dealerships and online, and despite having a good chunk for a down payment, I wouldn't get approved for financing because I was so young. Our next annual camping trip comes along, and we all, once again, head to Barry's Bay. This time with some money in the bank, still for sale, the same car that made me want a Charger in the first place is now my first car. Wow, that is a cool story, Chasen. How crazy is that? With a story like that, you want to keep that car. And I think it just has a really cool story, and trust me, buddy, you're going to regret getting rid of that car in the future just because of how cool the story is. Your first car, a Charger SRT8, gosh, what I wouldn't give to have my first car be a Charger SRT8. You're a lucky guy, so keep that car and cherish it. Thanks for sending in your story. This final story is from Jer. This is the 1970 Duster 340 my father and I restored as a father-son project almost 20 years ago. In 2000, when I was 20, we decided to restore it again. Years passed, Dad got older, I started a family, a new career, and the car was put on the back burner. Years passed, and Dad did what he could until in 2004, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. I spent every extra penny and every extra second I had working on that car and trying to regain lost time with him. Sadly, Dad lost his 4-year battle in September of 2007 without ever getting the chance to drive his car. His car now sits in my garage near completion next to the 1978 Aspen RT360 I hope to restore with my children someday. Jer, thanks for sending in your story. It kind of hit home for me because I recently lost my uncle to cancer. So my condolences to you and your family. I hope that your dad's memory can live on through his car. I also hope you get the chance to restore your 78 Aspen with your kids. I've recently been thinking that the only time that you have is lifetime. That's all we got. So live it to the fullest. If you've got a project car in the garage, go out there and work on it. If you have a project with a friend or a relative, find some time because you don't know how much you have. Life is fleeting, folks. So don't let it pass you by. Get out there and get those cars on the road, especially if they have a sentimental value. Unfortunately for Jerry, he never got that chance to finish the car with his dad, but that's okay because at least he still has the car. So Jer, I hope you get that car finished. All right, folks, let's bring this baby home. In the summer of 2015, I had finally got myself into a situation where I could seriously start looking for a Mopar project car. I was living in a house with enough room to work on a car, no garage, but I was going to make it work. I also had a little bit of cash in my pocket from some wheeling and dealing, so I set out to find my first classic Mopar project car. Being the Mopar hunter that I am, I looked and looked and looked and searched and hunted, and I started just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what was going to stick. I was answering ads for everything that was within my price range, which was really low. And I answered an ad for a 1976 Plymouth Duster for like $700. So we go to look at this car, and we get there, and it's this silver Duster. I knew in my mind, I was like, ugh, yeah, this isn't the one. So we ended up looking at the car, and the car was just, it was not good. It had one of the half vinyl tops, and the whole top was soft. And there was one point where, like, if I wanted to, I could just put my hand right through the roof. And that's how soft the vinyl top was. I looked underneath the car, completely rotted. The driver floor pan was gone. We popped the trunk. The trunk is completely rotted, and you can see the Bondo. So the guy drilled holes into the quarter panel, and when he mudded it, he had the mud just oozing through the drilled holes in the quarter panel, and it just looked like garbage. And I was bummed. I was really hoping just to get a cheap Mopar and just get my foot in the door, because in the back of my mind, I've always had the philosophy that you just get a car and then build an engine, put the engine in the car, but always have that opportunity to go, okay, maybe I'll run across a different car, and I can take this engine that I've built and got running and put it in the new car. So that's what I kind of went into this thinking, because at the time I was just able to afford something for around $1,000 or $2,000. So I went and looked at this car. It was $700. So I was like, okay, if I buy this one, I'll have a few $100 to kind of tinker with it. It was a slant six car. It was not running, but it'll run. It just needs a battery. I never went that far with it because I knew, like I said, as soon as we pulled up, I was like, oh, this is not the one. So we ended up leaving, and the guy called me, and he basically, this was a couple days later. He said, you can have the car for free, because he needed it out of his parents' driveway. And it was so bad. Like, thinking back, I probably should have figured out a way to take this car. I don't know what I would have done with it, but, he offered me the car for free, and I still refused it. That's how bad of shape this car was in. But there was a reason why I refused to take the car for free. And that's because that same day, after we left looking at that Plymouth Duster, I got a call from my cousin, and he wanted to meet my friend and I for some beers or whatever. So we decided to take this back road over to where we're meeting my cousin. And I'm talking to my friend Dustin, and he's telling me, don't worry, man, eventually the right car is going to come along. And I'm still bummed, because when I get my sights set on something, I've said this before, I get my hopes up, and I hate being crushed like that. So I'm really bummed, and I'm listening to what he's saying, but in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, gosh, I need to save up more money because I just can't find a car for how much money I'm working with. And we end up taking this corner, and on the left side of the road, I see a Mopar parked in a yard with a cardboard for sale sign in it. That's where this story gets interesting, because it was a 1969 Dodge Dart. So my friend shouts out, oh my God, look at that, or whatever. And I had already seen it, but I was speechless. So I pull into the first cul-de-sac. I get out, and my heart's beating really fast because I'm like, oh my God, it's a Dodge Dart. The reason why I was so amped up about the Dart was because my dad had a 1969 Dodge Dart. So I had always kept this one picture of his Dart in my room growing up as a kid, and his was a 69 Dodge Dart. It was on reverse Krager wheels, and it had hijackers, and it was dark green. It was a 69 GT with a 273, and it had the power bulge hood, the GTS hood. And I always loved that car, and always thought, oh, if I get a Mopar, it's going to look like that. It's going to have Kragers on it. It's going to be all jacked up. And so when I saw this car, I was immediately like, oh, this is it. You know what I mean? But there was a couple issues with the car. First of all, I don't know if you're familiar with the custom culture. Custom and culture both spelled with a K. Like Von Dutch and like Big Daddy Roth. The old custom hot rods and stuff, how they do the flame jobs. Well, this car, somebody rattle canned a flame job on it. So it was a flat black base, and then it had the white flames that eventually fade off into yellow, orange, and then like a red. And I was like, oh man, it looks so ugly. It just wasn't the right look for a Mopar, that's for sure. But I didn't let it bum me out too much, and I'm walking up to this car and I'm looking at it and I'm like, it looks pretty solid. I see a little bit of rot on the lower rear quarter of the driver's side. I see a little bit of rot on the rocker panel, but I'm like, that's not bad. But I was worried because it had been rattle canned. The whole car had been rattle canned. So when you see that, you're like, okay, what's underneath that paint? So my buddy and I start looking, and I look at the sign. It says $1,500 or best offer. So I'm like, oh my gosh, because that's the exact amount of money that I had for a budget. I had $1,500 exactly. So I was like, oh, this car's mine. At that point, regardless of how it went, I was buying that car. And we're looking at this car, and funny enough, I still have the for sale sign. I kept it. That's what a dork I am. So we're looking at the car, and I'm doing the classic knocking on it all the way down the side, like trying to see if I can hear the Bondo. You know what I mean? But it seems to be all metal. So I'm like, oh, that's crazy. And it's a 1969 Dodge Dart Custom, and it has that trim, that metal trim that follows the body line and along the side. And some of it was peeled off. And underneath the rattle can job, I saw dark green, which was the same color that my dad's car was. So at this point, I was like, all right, sold. I want this car. So I dial up the number, and my buddy goes, if you don't buy this car, I'm going to. And that's a threat, sir. I'll never forget that. And where's that car now? So my buddy says if I don't buy the car, he's going to, and I can't let him beat me to the Mopar punch, So I call the guy, say, I got the money. I want to buy the car. He's out of town. He's in Reno. So I said, I want the car, dude. And I was like, I see you have $1,500 or best offer. And I was like, how firm are you on that price? And he says, because in my mind, if I can get it for any cheaper, I'm going to, of course. But I have $1,500. So as long as the price don't go up, we're all good, baby. So he says that there's a local car club who offered to buy the car for $1,500. But they weren't there with the cash, and I was. So I said, you know what? I want the car. I'll do whatever it takes to buy this car. I need this car. So we ended up working the deal. I had his wife do the paperwork and stuff because they didn't have they never transferred the title. So I was worried about extra fees and all that stuff. To make a long story short, I didn't incur any extra fees. I had them write out, that they had the project car for 4 years because they got it like that. They didn't do the custom culture flame job or anything like that. They got it like that. So I ended up not having to pay any fees or anything because they wrote out a letter basically stating, hey, we never transferred the title, blah, blah, blah. This is the old owner. Here's a release of interest. And they actually had the title. So it all worked out in the end for me. I got the car for $1,500, and my buddy and I went back a couple days later, a day later, and I brought it home to my house. So now I have a 69 Dodge Dart that was the same color as my dad's, the car that I had always looked at when I was a kid, because I remember him telling me stories about it, and I wanted one so bad. And now I have the same year, the same model, the same color of Dodge Dart. So fast forward to today. That was back in 2015, in the summer of 2015. And it is now winter 2019. I still have the Dart. I managed to get so I spent a couple weeks with acetone and rags getting all the rattle can flame job off the car. And to my surprise, there was not a lick of Bondo or filler on this car. So I was really happy with that. It needs a couple little patches here and there, but nothing crazy. It's a pretty solid car. So I've always been happy with that purchase, and I have it still. It's sitting in my garage, and I'm currently having a 451 stroker built by my friend Norm, who owns his own machine shop. So if you're in the Pacific Northwest area and you need machine work done, go see my buddy Norm. His business is called Norm's Automotive and Machine LLC in Snohomish, Washington. He's a good guy. Tell him the Mopar Hunter sent you. But he's building a 451 stroker for me based off of a 400. If you're not familiar with those engines, they are probably the best budget stroker engine you can get as far as a big block goes in the Mopar world. That's debatable, but for me, a 451 checked all the boxes, so that's what I'm building for the car. On a future episode, we'll get more into the build, but I just kind of wanted to give you a background of my project car and how I came across it and the significance of the car to me. So now I have a car that's just like my dad's, and since he sold it off in the mid-70s, he traded that thing in for a van. That's a whole nother story too. We are definitely getting into that one. But I've always heard his stories about the car, and I just loved the look of it. So now that I have my own, I've been gathering parts to replicate that same look. I have the Kragers. I have the deep dish Kragers. You know, I've got the big block coming. He never had a big block, so I'm one-upping you, Pops. So we're going big block. We're going Kragers. I kind of want to keep it that, 70s, 80s street racer look. So I've got some cheap plastic bucket seats that I'm going to put in it. I'm thinking about mini tubbing it. I haven't gotten that far into really sitting down and coming up with the plan. I've just been kind of flying by the seat of my pants with this project, just like I do on this podcast. So it's going to be fun. I'll keep you guys posted. But for now, the engine's getting built, and I've kind of put that car on the back burner because I also have another Mopar project, which is my 1976 Dodge D100. But I'm running out of time, so I'll have to save that story for another episode. So for right now, all you need to know is that I still have the Dart. It's not going anywhere, and it's the flagship for the Mopar Hunter. That car has been with me since the beginning, and it's going to stay with me. It's not going anywhere, and I can't wait to drive this thing. I cannot wait to get this car on the road for the first time. It's one of those things where it's been with me for so long now that I'm used to it not running and driving and just sitting in my garage, but I'm starting to get motivated again. This podcast, I'm going to have to figure out how to work out the time to work on my projects and do this podcast, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to keep you entertained. I'm going to keep me entertained, and we're all going to be happy. So that's my Dart story in short. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as you enjoyed this episode. For now, I am Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and that was Talking Mopars.
Thank you for listening to Talking Mopars, your direct connection to all things Mopar. Until next time, remember, no Mopar left behind.